This is part of a super fundraiser, right? This is the last 30 minutes here. This is it. Operation Sleeping Giant is about to end. There's a countdown on the store. And these are all the specials. We're going to have to pull some of these. We'll try and keep some extended, but, I mean, obviously we're selling out of stuff, and we can't keep the loss leaders up. So we've got 40% off Brain Force, 40% off Silver Bullet, which is colloidal silver, 20% off all the water filters, 20% off all the air filters, 30% off flagship Survival Shield X2, 30% off Super Male Vitality, which I feel like we don't even hit on enough. 30% is a very large amount. It sounds routine when you list it like this, but 30% is a significant portion off of products like Super Male Vitality. 30% off Vitamin Mineral Fusion. And then you've got Liver Shield, Deep Cleanse, Anthroplex, Knockout, Survival Seeds, DNA Force. It's all on InfoWarsStore.com. And you've got about about 24 minutes, some change, to be a part of this operation. And a lot of you already have, and I want to thank you. You actually are drastically helping. It's not just pontificating about this up here. You know, it's the real deal. I talked about it this morning. Why not put your energy and a little bit of your funding behind something that actually matters, something where you know you've seen the fruits, you've seen what happens. You don't have to agree with everything. Right? I don't agree with everything that certain people say, or they don't agree with everything I say. It doesn't have to correspond like that. But look at the fruits. Look at what's actually happening. Look at the difference between this program, the #1 radio internet talk show program, and also one of the biggest top 10 in the United States. Look at what it's doing versus the others. Look at what it's doing versus when you turn on your television, you flip through the channels. It's doing a lot of good and a lot of difference because we're not beholden to these corporations. We're not going to follow the Rio protocol. Here we have this article. The Olympic Committee wants to ban non-sponsor brands from tweeting about the games. So see, we're not beholden like Coca-Cola to this ridiculousness. So I want to bring this up. We've talked about this before, but it's just so absurd. Brands that haven't paid millions of dollars to the group behind the upcoming Summer Olympics will need to watch their step on Twitter in the coming weeks. The International Olympic Committee is threatening legal action against any non-sponsor brands that dare to tweet about the games or any of its associated trademarks, according to a letter obtained by ESPN. Now, Alex talked about this earlier. I wanted to live tweet something about the Olympics. I think we should put out a tweet on the Alex Jones page about the Rio 2016 absurd censorship. I mean, threatening to, I don't know, sue. What are you going to do? What are you going to do if we tweet about Rio 2016? Because, oh, you could say, well, they mean big brands. What does a brand mean? Doesn't mean anything. I'm a brand. InfoWars is a brand. This camera I'm using is a type of brand. Everything's a brand. It's absurd. Oh, no brands are allowed to tweet about us. Well, gee, why do you think they don't want you to tweet about them? Oh, this is because of endless articles like this. 2 Brazilian fighter jets collide during a security exercise for the Olympics. Just over and over again. We showed earlier the police and fire with the sign saying, do not enter here. We're not paid enough. You're not safe. Then today, 2 Brazilian fighter jets collided off the coast of Rio de Janeiro while on a training exercise designed to hone protection for the city's upcoming Olympic Games. That's safety right there. The Brazilian Navy issued a statement after the collision on Tuesday saying that one of the pilots managed to land his plane safely, but the other crashed into the sea. A massive search began for the second pilot and continued through the night and into Wednesday morning. It's actually sad for the pilot. And then, you know, you had the articles about there's bodies washing up on the beach and stuff. And why do I belabor the 2016 Olympics, Rio Olympics? Because, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it is such a perfect parallel to everything else that's going on, where just like the DNC, it's a total crap show. It's a total, like, they're like hiring actors to fill seats because all the Bernie supporters left because they won't buy into Hillary. And then they're just like, it's fine, it's amazing. Look over there, there's smoke and fire. And they're like having sprinklers, like, look, there's fireworks. Everything's like burning down. Everyone's running and screaming. MSNBC is doing live shows, and there's protesters behind. They're actually real liberals that support Bernie, and they're screaming and saying, no Hillary, it's BS. And they're like, everything's fine, haha. And they like smile and have the representatives just ignore the people like it's like peasants riding in the background or something. So the Rio 2016 Olympics kind of like that. It's kind of like how the establishment system, how the establishment bought and paid for politicians are always like, everything's great. Like Obama's speech last night, 70% of the country doesn't like the direction of the U.S., and which I've talked about multiple times. I like how Trump tweeted it also. But they don't like the direction of the U.S., and Obama goes on, he's like, everyone loves this. Everyone agrees that we're going in the right direction. Millions of people are so happy with what we've done with this country. It's like, no, they're not. Not at all. Is this the Rio 2016 Olympics? Where, number one, they put out the press photos that look beautiful and everything's great. Number two, you're not allowed to talk about it. And then number three, the truth is it's a gaping flesh wound. But it's okay. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. And then you have Turkey. Turkey orders shutdown of over 130 media outlets, dismisses 1,600 military personnel. So Turkish authorities ordered the closure of more than 130 media outlets on Wednesday. Can you imagine that, by the way? Just imagine closing 130 media outlets. In a crackdown following July's failed coup, Reuters reported, citing CNN Turk, some 1,600 military personnel were also sacked in the Turkish government's latest move. So I kind of see similar things with the generals and everything being ousted, but imagine descending into a regime in which 130 media outlets can be closed down. And the reason we talk about this, and we're going to talk about another article about the United Arab Emirates, is because it's important to take your mindset. Okay, you're sitting right now maybe in the car or at home or at work or whatever. Chances are, if you're listening in the United States or a developed country, that you might be in a similar situation than I am. You might be sitting here at this desk. You might be in the cool air conditioning. I've got lights. I've got computer screens. I've got pretty much a pretty good environment right here, right? Now, meanwhile, we can't see anything that's an immediate threat, presumably, right? There's nothing bad happening here. I could just sit here for a while. But there's a detachment, because when we're just fat and happy and we can see the TVs in the background, like I can see the news TVs in there. I can see, you know, ads for pharmaceutical drugs or whatever to make me happy, and Prozac and whatever it is. I can see all those things. I can see football. I can look up news here. I can look up silly websites. I can go on Reddit all day. And it's hard for me in that state to actually get in the mindset that, number one, there's real things that are a threat in this world that we need to care about. And number two, not everyone is in your position. And so the issue here is also things like this. If you get caught using a VPN in the United Arab Emirates, you will face fines of up to $545,000. So Turkey's shutting the media companies down. The United Emirates finding people. I mean, there's no freedoms in many of these countries. And then we're sitting here worried about getting triggered by Twitter. Also, the producer just reminded me, we do have a boiled down of Billy Corgan from last night, who was on the show for the Operation Sleeping Giant, and it boiled it down to all of, I guess, the key points, because there was a lot of really interesting stuff. So I want to go ahead and play that, and then we'll be back with some more news. So let's give that up.
How do you find your inner voice? How do you understand or really connect with what that true guidance is if we haven't even been able to connect with that inner voice for such a long time? How do you even begin that journey?
Well, that's a really difficult question. Let me take one step back, because obviously the DNC is going on right now, and the Democrats have their own version of this. So this is not a political statement as much as an observation from the standpoint of an entertainer. You've had the DNC now on for 3 days, and you've literally had for 3 days not one mention of the scandal. Let's say from the stage, because obviously there's a lot going on around the event. But from the stage, you had no mention of the WikiLeaks hacking. Mm-hmm. You've had no mention of Hillary being investigated by the Justice Department, all that, and obviously that was cleared, controversially. So what I'm trying to say, and the reason I'm bringing this up, and I'm not trying to make a political point, is people are literally sitting in a conference room going, well, we can't talk about that, and we definitely can't talk about that. And if you're going to bring that up, you know what I'm saying? It's a conscious manipulation. Mm-hmm. Now, a person who's on that side of the political aisle would say, well, they don't have to talk about those things. But my point is why wouldn't they talk about those things? Why doesn't Hillary stand up and say, you checked out all my stuff and you came after me and you found nothing. The point is they want to avoid those subjects because they want to turn the page. They want to move on to a different psychological profile. That's entertainment. That is not. That's not nothing to do with the human condition. The natural human response when you're accused of something, if you believe you're innocent, is to stand there and say, "Hey, by the way, this is my opinion of what happened. I'm going to tell you the truth, and then I'm going to move forward." You hear Alex do it all the time in the air, where he's accused of things by other people. He will go into a massive explanation of, "This is the way I think, this is the way I feel." That is the natural human response to accusation. It's not to propagandize and pretend like nothing's going on. That's entertainment. As far as how do you locate your center, as redundant as it sounds, you must actually look at the world you're living in and make a correct assumption based on your own ideological beliefs, spiritual perspectives, and make a read like a quarterback on the field and look and say, these are my people, these are the people I trust, these are the people I don't trust, these are the people I'm going to follow. And one argument I would make that's sort of an extension of the idea, because obviously race and politics is a very controversial subject at this time in our country's history, as it has been before. I would call it a new tribalism, where people are going to form into new tribes of consciousness and belief systems and interrelate sort of beyond race. And maybe that's part of our human evolution, is that we must, when people say in a very kind of utopian way, we must get beyond people's race, color, creed, and all that stuff. I agree with that as a sort of a natural liberal, but maybe the evolutionary point on that is you're going to find like-minded people or like-souled people who see the world the way you do, so that you can compare notes and say, yeah, this is the way I feel. And as you said in my introduction, you and I do that sometimes. We will sit and text and talk about, well, what's your perspective? And then you give me your perspective. I think that's what you're going to see more and more, and that's where technology can be an aid to us, because we can kind of in real time share in almost like a different kind of hive mind, bigger sets of information. And that's where InfoWars is very much part of that other tipping point in getting into a bigger hive mind of what are we actually looking at here when we look at these social, political, spiritual, religious systems, that's the better word, that are basically propagandizing what we're actually looking at and what we're actually experiencing.
So do you think technology, obviously it's super important because this is, how we're able to reach the masses out there, but they control these systems at the moment. They've got people corralled into these internet ghettos, and they can shut them down at any time. We've got the internet kill switch. Mm-hmm. So is the internet, obviously it is a mechanism that is helping with this global awakening, but is that it? Or are humans going to evolve on our own to the point? I mean, what do you think? Are we in this matrix, or are we sort of these organic beings, God sort of experiencing itself out here, and kind of a warning to not get trapped inside of the internet that they're wanting us to be connected to all the time?
Well, taking that in kind of an interesting route, Pete Townsend in around 1971 was writing or doing a kind of a thing called the Lifehouse Project, which sort of pre-staged the idea of sort of spiritual communication vis-a-vis through technology, almost talking about the internet before the internet. And he didn't finish the project, and then many of those songs became famous songs, and Won't Get Fooled Again and all this type of stuff. The reason I point this out is that ultimately, from a spiritual and avatar perspective, communication doesn't need technology. We can communicate with the stars or God within at any given time. We don't need Twitter or Facebook to help us do that. But there is a spiritual component to technology in the way that people are sharing in real time. And that was, of course, the great promise when something like Twitter kicked in. Hey, we can all kind of comment and interrelate and find common ground or common belief as an event is unfolding. You saw it during the, what they call the Arab Spring or whatever. Mm-hmm. There was this sort of idea of in-the-moment reportage where everybody was a citizen journalist and taking pictures, and it all felt very refreshing. But what we see now is these systems are being used to actually control, neuter, and shape those thoughts in real time. And I of course, I see it not only on InfoWars but other sites where everyone is racing to shape the narrative before in essence a narrative sets in. And again, from an observational point of view, why is so much energy being exerted to tell you, oh, nothing to see here, move on?
All right, that's Billy Corgan, a very smart guy, very interesting perspective and points. All right, we'll be right back. I want to remind you, this is the last segment coming up of InfoWars.